I am Gaurav Dubey, co-founder of Logistics Insider, and you all are watching Logistics Insider's first live talk show, Let's Talk Logistics. It's a series of candid talk shows on all the issues pertaining to the Indian logistics industry. In this show, industry leaders will brainstorm on all the pain points of the industry, best practices, innovations, and technologies which can give respite to the industry in this troublesome time, and much more. So, we have come up with the show with an objective to make industry knowledge available to our wider range of audience here on LinkedIn. So, our audience comprises of supply chain professionals ranging from corporate shippers, chairmen and directors of companies, CXO level professionals, mid to low managerial level employees, and even young entrants in the supply chain domain. So, if you like our show, then it's our humble request to like, share, and follow us here on LinkedIn because we believe knowledge is power. So, today we are going to present the first show of our series, which is on the theme Global Air Cargo Business Rising to a New Normal, powered by Skyways Group. I will not be talking on the events theme too much, as for that purpose, we have highly experienced, knowledgeable, and eminent panel members present with us today. Our expert speakers will brainstorm on the prevailing issues of global air cargo business in today's session. So I welcome Mr. Vikram Paul, who is an air cargo expert and independent consultant. He's going to moderate our today's power-packed session. I welcome Mr. Glyn Hughes, who is Global Head of Cargo, IATA. Mr. Tushar Jani, who is Group Chairman, Cargo Service Center, and Mr. Halit Tuncer, who is Cargo Director, South Asia, Turkish Airlines. And in a while, Mr. Manoj Singh will also join us. Mr. Singh is Senior Vice President, Head Cargo at Mumbai International Airport. So without any further delay, I request Mr. Paul to take the charge and officially start the panel discussion. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and namaste to all of our panel members as well as all of the audience that is listening to this event, which was very suitably introduced by Gaurav. It is my privilege to be able to have on the panel some really distinguished and experienced speakers who are being able to talk about the most current situation with regards to the air freight business and really address global air cargo rising to a new normal as we believe the dust has settled on COVID and the pandemic situation that we've experienced for a couple of months now. The idea is to be able to get a couple of talking points thrown open to the panelists and let first the subject matter expert kind of talk about their perspective and then throw it open to the rest of the panelists as well to provide any comment, any opinions, and any current updates, given that the panel is extremely broad and deep in their experience and knowledge of the overall air cargo business, not necessarily restricted to certain areas of the business. And that's one of the fun factors of the show today. We have about 6 to 7 broad talking points, and we'd like to spend about 10 minutes on each, which allows us to have some time at the end of the session to be able to really talk about some wrap up and some conclusion items that I can help in compiling as well. So without any further ado, I will throw it open to the panel to really make any opening remarks and then start to talk about the talking points that I've listed down here.
Great.
Glyn, Tushar, or Halit, any opening remarks before we get into the crux of it?
Thank you, Vikram. This is Glyn. First of all, I want to say thank you very much for inviting me to join such a great panel for such an important discussion today. I'll just keep my opening remarks just very brief, just to basically say that, you know, as you've mentioned, we've experienced an incredibly unprecedented impact on global society and our industry in the last 5-6 months. And I think it's changed how we are as human beings, even what we're doing now. You know, we're communicating digitally. We're actually participating in a lot more webinars, a lot more distancing in terms of the workplace, a lot more focus on digitalization. And I think it's critical that we harness some of the lessons learned from this unfortunate period that global society has experienced and try and capture that so that we're much more resilient and much more able and capable to respond to similar crises which will appear in future, and we need to be able to respond to those. So with that, I'm looking forward to today's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
Halit, go ahead. Halit, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me today also. I need to agree with Glyn. We embraced the new normal very quickly. So we can see that it's doable. We are now in a webinar and we are doing everything online. So we need to be aware of that and be ready for the future. So thanks again.
Well, both of my colleagues have spoken. I just want to say this particular epidemic has taught us how to be empathized with other people. People are ready to help each other. And I think there is more collaborative among people, among competitors, among stakeholders, and along with the government. I think that's one single lesson. And Glyn, as I said, the resilience power of human being has shown how the God has created this human body and mind and soul. And this is at the in the forefront. We have seen how the real human being can be. So with that, looking forward, thank you, Logisticsinsider, for putting this great idea. And we are all together. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Singh, as well. Thank you for joining. I know you were in between, I guess, offices and the airport. So thank you for joining, and maybe some opening remarks from you, Mr. Singh, as the rest of the panelists have spoken before we get down to some of the Q&A and the main business end of the discussion today.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Sorry for my bit delayed because I was just stuck in a very urgent meeting, just had to rush. And, I was telling Gaurav to, maybe 15 minutes I'll be delayed. Yeah, of course, one most important aspect for our business is we stay alive because our logistic industry is the only one in the aviation industry trying to be the savior for everyone. And not only we're focusing on the economy of the country, also in logistic sphere where we have a very important role to play. And the cargo industry, in totality cannot sit idle. And what I see and foresee also, the things will be further moving on a very brighter side. So one ray of hope in the aviation industries are the cargo front, and surely things will move faster. And I hope that going forward, the growth aspect what we have seen in the last 4 months in all airports in India, things have moved into a very positive direction. But of course, there are challenges, there are areas of concern which we see in terms of overall ecosystem where the manpower and the kind of volume which we are handling and the way the industry is moving, how the airlines are facing challenges, the freight industry, the freight forwarders, and the supply chain players. So overall, I feel there is a challenge, but there is also ray of hope. And I think we have to move forward on positive note where there is one important line where as an airport we are seeing more surprises coming in from all sectors. But yes, I would proudly say that the kind of our industry is playing at the Mumbai airport or any of the airports in India. I think the hats off to all the channel players who have been working day in and day out in this challenging time. Right from the vehicle of 100 vehicles in April or March in the start of the COVID, now more than 1,000 or 1,500 vehicles are coming. This only shows how the trend has moved. So how a challenge of 100 vehicles coming during that moment, a fear factor. Now with 1,500 vehicles or 1,200 average vehicles coming to Mumbai airport, you can only foresee that if these vehicles are coming in, they are coming with confidence. they're coming with a perception, they're coming with a hope, and here everyone is playing together. So I hope and see that this industry is really working hard, right from the regulatory, from the government perspective, from the regulatory perspective. I would say much has been played in terms of taking the safety compliance of people working at the facility at the airport. So hats off to everyone. So to begin with, my opening statement is, I think let's stick to positive side. Things will be there unless the vaccine comes. We all have to fight it out, and we are really working there as a COVID warrior. I would say we all here speaking on behalf of our industry. Glyn is here, Mr. Tushar is here. I think we have got a good mix of people trying to really see that we're not really speaking on a webinar, but looking into every piece of packages which is moving from any of the airports are in a much safer and secure manner being handled. So that's the vision. We need to take very positive steps.
Thank you so much, Manoj. Thank you. So with that, I'll get into some of the Q&A and some of the talking points that we've set up for today. The way we've done this is really to break the session up into two parts. One is more talking points from a global context. I think we have a large amount of audience which is really global and wants to understand what it looks like as a total ecosystem and a network. And then also from a regional context, because all of you are very conversant, very, very knowledgeable, and very connected to what's happening within this region as well, which is South Asia, for example. The first point I'd like to bring up is probably more aimed at trying to find out from IATA, really popular one, I've got to say. Most countries coming out of lockdown, and some countries even encouraging travel to open up. What is the IATA forecast now looking like, and has it essentially changed from when the pandemic hit us? Is IATA looking now at a V, U, or an L-shaped recovery? And what is the most current update that you can provide to us in this area?
Let me take myself off mute. Thank you, Vikram. Unfortunately, I was trying to find the IATA crystal ball before this discussion just to see exactly what the recovery would look like. Somebody must have moved it. I couldn't find it. But on a serious note, this is one of the big challenges now, is that honestly, nobody knows. We have recently revised our forecast with regards to the recovery. We feel that the recovery has started much slower than we had originally hoped for in the industry. We now don't anticipate the passenger numbers returning until 2024. When you look at the revenues for the industry, this year the industry revenues are going to be down nearly $420 billion versus 2019. That's a 50% reduction, leading to an overall industry loss of about $84 billion. That's about $230 million every single day. That's horrendous for the industry. So it's critical that whatever that recovery looks like, there are certain factors that need to take place. We need continued government support. And I think, as Mr. Jani and Mr. Manoj was mentioning, that collaboration is critical. It's critical that the government support the carriers through this very difficult time. It's also very critical that passenger confidence is reinstilled, and that can be done through two ways. Number one, through vaccine, which obviously we're all relying and hoping for comes through sooner rather than later, because that's really what's going to boost passenger confidence. I've flown. I flew actually last week for the first time since the lockdown. It was only a short haul, but wearing a mask for 2 hours, and we're very nervous. You look through, you hear somebody coughing, you immediately check in which direction they were facing. You distance yourself. You don't want to touch the poles. You look at the security trays, etc. So we're all very nervous, even though we know how much, and I know how much the airports have done and the airlines have done to sanitize the process, but we're still nervous. And again, that's translated into, and I'll just give you a couple of quick numbers. In May, the revenue passenger kilometers was 91% down versus May of last year. And in June, it was 86% down. So it's moving in the right direction, but incredibly slowly from incredibly low base. So sadly, I can't say if it's a V, if it's a U. Personally, I think it's going to be more like a W. I think it's going to be a roller coaster. I think we're going to find some things are open. And then all of a sudden, as we noticed just in the last few days, you'll see hotspots, you'll see pockets of infections, and then you'll see reintroduction of travel restrictions. And once you get reintroduction of travel restrictions, that implies that further travel restrictions will be coming along. So I think the key is that as an industry, and I think as Manoj and Halit and Tushar are very, very familiar, and they've done incredibly well, as an industry, we just have to be agile and flexible to respond to whatever scenario actually arises. So the sad news is we don't anticipate return for at least 4 years. So during that period of time, cargo, we'll talk about cargo a little bit later on in more specific terms, but as an industry, I think we're going to have a very traumatic 4-year period coming up.
Thank you. Any of the other panel members would like to come in on this and offer a perspective?
Yes, may I also have some comments? Yes, the scenario doesn't look very optimistic at the moment. It is pessimistic, and it is not coming up. The passenger volumes are not coming up as expected. Yes, but all stakeholders in the industry are more than ready and well prepared. The airports, the airlines, they got prepared very fast, and the precautions being taken are, I believe, enough to start back everything. But the traumatic thinking of the passengers and of course the economics affected too much. I hope with the vaccine the recovery will be much higher rate. So I'm with Manoj here, so I am looking at the bright side of it. So we are starting some stations, then we are canceling some flights. There are some new restrictions coming up and down. As Glyn mentioned, we are already having this up and downs at the moment, but with the vaccine introduction, I believe it will be only up. So that's how I feel.
Vikram, I've got a selfish way to look at it, to be very frank. And I'm being a cargo man, so naturally I'm biased towards cargo. And I look at it, when passenger capacity hasn't gone more than maybe 10, 20%, the cargo capacity is reached to almost 70%, right? I also look at the second aspect is, as what the Glyn said, that, recovery for passenger will take a little more time, maybe 23, maybe 24. It means more aircraft available for cargo, right? That's how I look at it. Number 3, I just want to bring that point. Halit is here. I just heard Air Canada did the biggest cargo volume revenue in last 3 months ever they've done in their inception. Etihad has done the highest number of cargo operation ever there since their inception. I don't know how it can throw, but I know Turkish is doing very well, and so is Emirates. So I'm saying, I'm being a little selfish, and I say that one arm of the aviation does only 10-20% sale, and the cargo probably would do almost equivalent what we have done earlier. So in spite of all this, what we are looking at for cargo, I'm very optimistic, right? The marine side is also, we'll discuss in detail, little more in detail. But I'm saying we are happy, by grace of God, we are lucky that we're in cargo. That's what I would say.
No, thank you. Very appropriately put by everybody. I think this was an important opening question and an important one leading to the next question. Some of you have already kind of alluded to it in your first responses itself. With passenger converted cargo airlines, that's the new definition of what's happening with the wide body aircrafts that we're seeing. Being the current high demand product, new reality, and the major occupant within the balance sheet, the pride of place within the balance sheet for many airlines, how is the air freight factor versus the passenger factor now being addressed by some of the major airlines? How are you pivoting and changing the business model essentially and the management focus to the new reality, which is that air freight will be more dominating than ever versus passenger.
Yes, I can have some little comment as an airline for this. Yes, when the demand was peak, there was enough capacity. So there wasn't enough capacity in the market. So we need to introduce these wide bodies to accommodate and more cargo and catch up the demand. And the rates were also very high. So it was good. So we converted 30 of our aircrafts at the peak time. Conversion means not for us removing the seats, but getting the seats and the floor and everything technically ready for the aircraft to accommodate more cargo and cargo only passenger aircraft. So we did that with 30 aircrafts in the peak season, but now in August it is down to 9 aircrafts because air freight rates are going down and demand is not that much. Like in Mumbai, production hubs, the demand is getting less, and like Dubai, the transit hubs, the demand is getting high. So things are getting back to normal. The sea air kind of business multimodals are getting back to normal, and air freight rates are going down. This is healthy for the industry to recover faster. So the demand for the passenger carbon-only passenger aircraft is getting down, but hope we can support it with the rise of the passenger demand. So the balance will be there, more passenger, and then the flights will be more profitable because operating a flight for only cargo, you take all the costs of a freighter, but you can only load half of a freighter, and ground time is much more high. So because of the manual loading, so utilization of the aircraft is not good totally. So the demand is going less, and I am again hoping best for the passenger to recover with the vaccine. The psychological side of the virus will also diminish, and more viable capacity will be there.
Yes, please.
Vikram, can I just, and I think Halit's just explained and just highlighted one of the perfect examples of where air cargo has been incredibly responsive and innovative. And as Tushar and Manoj are saying as well, is that if we look at this situation, historically, cargo was about 50% freighters, 50% passenger aircraft. As about 70% of the passenger fleet was grounded back in the March timeframe, it meant that about 45% of global cargo capacity supply was just grounded, removed. So the way that the airlines responded by putting on the passenger aircraft for cargo-only operations, and the way that the governments approved, they had to come up with very quick certification processes for those scenarios where seats were removed. For other scenarios where carriers wanted to use loading of cargo in seats, also needed certification approvals, etc., was incredibly responsive by the governments. But we should also pay tribute to the ground handling community, because many of the ground handlers, the individuals, have never been presented with a scenario of loading cargo in the cabin. So when they're presented with, and in some cases, and this, if I can call the numbers, 2,800 loose boxes, and the team was told, right, you need to load these in the seats, in the overhead compartments, under the seats, in the cupboards. And you could have teams of people saying, that's not our job. We don't know how to do that. I'm not going to do that. But it didn't happen. They put together human chains so that they actually loaded them in an efficient fashion of standing next to each other on stairs and in the cabin. And as Manoj was saying, or Halit was saying, it takes longer to do the turnaround, but the industry responded to the need. And there were, 2,300 passenger aircraft were utilized for cargo-only operations. Of that, there was about 130 to 140 where the seats were removed completely. And again, governments had to, or civil aviation authorities had to go through a certification type approval process. And it allowed as much as possible for that demand to be adequately addressed. And if you think about that demand was for PPE, that demand was for pharmaceuticals, that demand was for food stuff, that demand was keeping people alive. So it wasn't just the industry moving around nice to have gadgets like smartphones and clothes, etc. It was actually responding to save individuals. And I think the industry should be incredibly proud of the role that it's played. Everybody, all of your listeners, all of your speakers, all of the people associated with this industry should be incredibly proud of the fact that they all played a role in helping protect society. And no matter how disastrous this last 6 months have been for human life, it would have been a hell of a lot worse if it wasn't for air cargo and frontline medical staff and other critical employees out there day in, day out. So I say, thank you and well done to all of those.
Thank you. Absolutely. Kudos to the frontline workers and the COVID warriors in the air freight industry. Please go ahead, Manoj.
Yeah. In fact, Vikram, when we were discussing about the first impact in March when the lockdown started, it was all of a surprise for all of us. The whole nation on 21st of March was something which was not predicted to be such a huge, large population in the world. Getting into a total lockdown was a big challenge and a complete mindset change. And we started off as usual month end, and then month start of the forecasting and all we got more into the IATA forecasting stuff and all, getting into with all the forecasting big players across the globe, how the world will look like. And we really had been very pessimistic. Our body language, our thought process went very, very different. But that was the beginning, I would say. And we really been very, we were not hopeful in the beginning of April. And now when we talk about what Mr. Jani mentioned, this is what we never anticipated, but we had a very positive hope. And there are a few strong players of our channel supply players, working together day in and day out for ensuring that the supplies are not stopped. Now, the best part was your question, which you were talking about the airlines. As he mentioned, we are all a bit selfish about what Mr. Jani mentioned. It's an exact scenario now. If you see any airlines, what IATA has predicted that, in the next 3 years or 2 years down the line, the airlines revenue 26 to 28% would be purely coming in from cargo. So if that forecasting is being from say 13 or 12% to 26%, so it has a direct impact to the airport revenue sectors as well. So it's not about the revenue part. It's all about how you are trying to anticipate the volume and how the airlines are trying to gear up. It's more important if you see most of the airlines across the globe and even our domestic sectors all have looked into the cargo potential, because they know that immediate survival or survivor is one of the cargo sector, which was, I would say, not a last priority, I would say, but also not very aggressive or the prioritized product, I would say. But things have changed. Now we see the potentials built in. A lot of innovations are coming in. How the airlines can be capitalizing the capacity in the aircraft. Of course, the turnaround time makes difficult. But one more challenging, which I want to be a little blunt on with the airlines, where they need to really focus is now. They need to have all types of product strategy in place. In this scenario, when your capacity gets shrunk, when the capacity of 50% belly and 50 was a freighter, now 70 to 80, 90% of the movement is through the freighters. Now, a lot of charter companies across the globe, where, if you see Dubai, Frankfurt, and Singapore and Hong Kong are supplying a lot of charter aircrafts. So the demand for those things have also increased. Now, when the capacity goes on, the freight, of course, you don't have to speak about the commercial, but certain products in this entire scenario of your supply chain gets diluted or are getting dead. So only the niche products are being prioritized. Of course, everyone looks into the revenue part, but the typical air cargo products also need to be sustained. And, we need to enhance those kind of product also to really have those potential availability for an airline to ship the goods. Here, what we see is there is not imbalance, I would say, but yes, the priorities are of those products which gives a huge freight. Of course, they will have to see that the revenue comes in. But at the same time, I feel that's my take, that certain very important product of air cargo should not be as given an option to the sea line. And this has moved. Even the farmers have also moved to the shipping lines. So it's very important that you create capacity. You have to do some disruption in the capacity. at every big hubs, so that our air supply chain, which is known for all types of time sensitive product, is all alive. And that's where I'm trying to put it forward, that capacity has to be there. And let's not have a multiple option for a customer to say, okay, by air it's not possible because the freights have gone three times or four times. I think we need to play something balanced, so that the product of what is natural, which we are known for, shipping, say 20 strong commodity, is alive. Certain things are just moving out. It's only getting dominated to only certain products. So it should not be little one product. We should have a mixture of all in the aircrafts. That's what my take is, and that really helps the industry, the economy to also grow, because you need to be very, very, very sensitive on how the economy goes in. When we look into the productivity at the airport, faster clearance, because the raw material because the economy of the country needs those supply to come on time, and then it dilutes. And when there's a delay in the production, the impact is on the economy. Impact on economy means it has a cascading effect on other supply chain. The product become expensive. So everything gets. So everyone has a role to play. I think it's a bit of some correction required, I would say.
Thank you. Great input. And really leading from there, there is a conversation that takes place around, what if, 250 routes, 250 OD pairs were actually tested to be able to be bought into a model which is typically tariffed at next flight out, express, standard, and deferred. Given that, you talked about products and the fact that some kind of product portfolio needs to come into the industry because of the huge changes that have taken place on air freight, the cost changes that have also taken place as a result of that, and the threat that cargo could be moving over to ocean freight because of the unsustainable levels of air freight that exist as far as the business is concerned. But Halit, let me make one more sub point to this and ask you, given what you talked about in terms of Turkish Airlines, when reconfiguration of aircraft was taking place as the COVID hit us, there was a lot of correlation between the feasibility and the profitability on these reconfigured packs to freighter aircrafts versus the cost of fuel, as it was, at its lowest level. It just crashed to the bottom at that time, and whether an increasing cost of fuel would make these aircraft financially less and less viable. Do you have a view on that? And can you help us look at how Turkish Airlines looks at that?
Yes, sure. Actually, the surge in oil prices doesn't reflect immediately to the airlines. It's taking some time. We are getting some monthly prices. I'm not very technical detail. I don't know the all technical details on this, but it's for sure that the oil price is not reflecting. When day to day it goes down, it doesn't go down for us. So our cost is calculated a little bit differently. So when the first stage of the pandemic was there, we were quick to attend the demand and prepare 6 to 7 aircraft in the first stage for cabin loading in April, the second week of April. It was, and we started utilizing in Mumbai also and Sri Lanka in the first stage in my region. So for 2-3 months it went very well, but oil prices going up and unit revenues going down, it became unprofitable. Now we are trying to open the flights for sale for passenger, because it will balance. In Sri Lanka we are doing this once a week. A flight is open for both cargo and passenger. There is not much passenger demand, yes, but it is good to have. It will improve in time, and we are looking in the positive side. Now the demand for the cargo only passenger aircraft is going down, while the balance of passenger and cargo mixed aircraft is going up. We are not using this narrow bodies most of the time, because less passenger in a wide body, you can keep the social distancing better, and the passenger can feel much more comfortable, and you can load much more cargo. So this is the way we are going forward at the moment. So this is the healthy and positive thing happening, I believe, at the moment. Yes.
Thank you, Halit. Glenn, I think you referred to the fact that there were a number of wide-body aircrafts currently operating, and it's a huge spike from what it was, in say 3 months ago when we were looking at the scenario of COVID and the effect on the business. Do you have any input with regards to this particular issue, Glenn?
Yeah, I think Halit has highlighted it perfectly. Is that when the aircraft or the fleets were immediately grounded, nobody foresaw the demand for PPE. I mean, it was just unbelievable. PPE was something that air cargo never transported before. These are particularly low cost, lightweight materials, masks, etc., gloves, other equipment that would normally just go on container ships because they were never as urgent as they became now. So when you have such a huge demand, and considering the fact that medical staff need to replace them 18, 20 times a day, that the sheer volume, the sheer number meant that the ocean industry, which was already experiencing some blank sailings just because the demand had already slowed down there, it meant it had to go on air cargo. As people have said, is that, we're a supply and demand business, which meant that at that early stage, there wasn't enough supply there. So the demand was high, the supply of aircraft was quite low, which then encouraged more airlines to actually put this on. Aircraft designed to fly. They're not designed to sit on the tarmac. And even when they're sitting on the tarmac, they still have to become maintenanced and checked and engines started, etc., etc. So you need the hours up. You need the pilots to be flying because that's what pilots like to do. And effectively, that's how they also need to keep their hours in there, etc. So, the aircraft being utilized for cargo-only activity was critical. And I think, as others have mentioned, when you look at some of the airline results that have already been announced, many of the airline CEOs are saying that if it wasn't for cargo, the airline would have perhaps already had to seek bankruptcy protection. And in some cases, sadly, they have had to. So cargo has been a savior on many fronts. But like Halit was saying, we do anticipate seeing that reduction of demand coming in to the point where, as passenger flights start to resume, you will see the passenger aircraft picking up some more of the cargo. But it's also important for the cargo industry that a strong passenger network is returned as soon as possible, because the air cargo industry is about supporting the global economy. And the global economy cannot be adequately supported just with main deck capacity. There are too many secondary and smaller markets where you can't afford to fly a freighter in at 1/3 utilization. You need the bellies. You need the bellies of these wonderful new aircraft, the 777, the A350, the 787, etc. You need those bellies going into all of those passenger networks. Halit, if I'm not mistaken, I think you have something like 270 cities around the world, if not more, that you serve with your passenger network.
Yes.
It's probably even way more than that. And that's critical for cargo, for the manufacturers and the consumers in those markets. So, main deck, passenger aircraft used for cargo only can serve major markets, but it really is important for the cargo industry to get that passenger network back up running so that it can go back to a globally integrated network.
Thank you. Moving on, and I think the next point is also something that came up in our casual conversations yesterday, but I did look at the IATA report, which referred to the fact that the June IATA report indicates that demand was softer than normally suggested by manufacturing output, and new export orders had stabilized. The relative underperformance was driven by air freight losing market share of total world trade in the last 3 months to cheaper and slower means of transportation, i.e. obviously ocean freight. Is this threat real and uniformly seen by all stakeholders? Can air cargo survive with these rates that currently exist? So quite a broad question, but it really starts from data that's reflected in the IATA report. And then, how do we see our own businesses and our own clients responding to the high air freight rates and the capacity crunch that existed for about 4 months now?
Thank you, Vikram. That's a great question. I think, as we mentioned and as we've all discussed, there's really several factors here. Supply and demand is critical. We saw high rates, as you would expect in these situations when demand completely outstrips the available supply. Thankfully, that's getting more in balance now, but we have a secondary area of concern. In fact, there's multiple areas of concern, but one right now, which of course is trade imbalance. As PPE is coming out, you're seeing a lot of focus in many markets on exports, but with limited imports. And therefore, that means that cargo, which is unidirectional, means that to put on a financially viable network, if you have no cargo coming into a country and a lot of cargo coming out, sadly, you have to finance that entire network operation or dual feed operation. So, you know, it's important that we get imports and exports coming back in many markets. But then what's really going to impact over probably the next 6 months is the jobs market. The loss of jobs around the world is just astronomical. I can't speak specifically about India. I apologize, I don't have particularly close information. But if you just look at what's happened in the US, if you look at what's happened even in Switzerland, which is considered somewhat isolated and cushioned from a lot of economic troubles because of the focus on some core high-tech and pharmaceutical and financial industries. There's a lot of manufacturing here, a lot of small businesses, a lot of shops, a lot of restaurants, a lot of people have had to close down. And when you close down and people are losing their jobs, you don't replace the television, you don't replace the smartphone, you don't replace the kitchen gadgets, you don't buy a new suit, you don't buy jewelry, you don't buy a new watch. So it then creates a downward spiral that as more people sadly lost their jobs, there's less disposable income. The consumer is the driver of about 2/3 of the global economy. If you take out a significant chunk of that, then of course things like PMI, Purchase Managers Index, forecast for production will go down. If production goes down, then of course you might have a reimbalance where you might now have actually demand and supply going back the other way. The consumer may not be that urgent to get things other than PPE urgently, so slower, cheaper modes of transport may become more viable. But that's on the negative side. On the positive side, you know, air cargo demand over the last few months, if you look at what's happened on the e-commerce sector. Now, we've been talking about e-commerce for the last 2-3 years, about wonderful double-digit growth, etc. In the last 5 months, that's been huge double-digit growth. As people have been sitting at home, things they've needed, they've had to order online. There's many areas now where there's actually been shortage of distribution opportunities. So there's been blockages because e-commerce demand has been so great. Perishable sectors continue to grow. Pharmaceuticals, we know, has continued to grow, and we haven't yet talked about vaccine. I'm sure that'll come up later on in the discussion. So again, it comes back to an industry that needs to be able to respond to every scenario. But for me, the one in particular area is we need to look at the rebound in jobs. I think that is going to be something which is critical for our industry.
Thank you. Tushar, would you be able to throw some light on this issue from an Indian perspective, what it means both on the modal shift or the perceived modal shift between air and ocean, and also I think the point that Glyn makes around employment and jobs, you know, and job loss versus future job creation, for example?
I'd like to bring little different perspective. The whole global supply chain is going to change, probably. So you will have countries becoming more self-dependent on their own resources. So that's going to throw challenge, number one. Number two, like Glyn mentioned probably in our earlier conversation, that people will source material from close by, because you go to adjacent countries, close by countries, so the goods don't have to travel. I think the third very key Halit mentioned in his talk is about multimodal. I think multimodal is going to come to the forefront. Sea air will come in forefront. Coming back to perspective to India, I just read the report today morning. Automobile demand in city of Delhi has gone 5 times more. 5 times. Okay. Now, I can't figure out any reason why, except people probably don't want to travel in public transport. That could be the only logical I can see. Now, I believe, you know, customer behavior, you can't suppress it for a long time. If you remember earlier when President Clinton was taking over from President Bush and the whole US was going into a recession, and President Clinton just came in and said, everything is fine, go and enjoy, spend your money, right? Now, the point which I'm making is the currency hasn't reduced. Let's look at it. The money is parked somewhere. Have we burned the money? So from your pocket to my pocket, or Halit's pocket to Manoj's pocket to Glyn, somewhere money is parked. That's one. Secondly, I think so we have gone through so much shock of this unknown fear because we can't see this enemy. So we can't be offensive, we can't be defensive. There are no drugs, there are no treatment. What will happen, we don't know. I mean, if you look at it, certain data as far as India is concerned, we lose more people on road accident than in COVID. Okay, that's what the minister was saying. So I think so. People will come out of this side. I mean, let's look at it. When the COVID came first in, Glyn and Halit, I don't mind sharing with you, the building complex where were not treating well people who have tested positive. Okay, so they were looking at very bad. They wanted to throw them out. All that happened. Today, things are a little different. So the world will come to that normal. Wearing mask is part of fashion. Michael Kors or Louis Vuitton has come out with a nice fashionable mask which is costing probably $300, right? So the whether it will be V shape, U shape, W shape, I'm not economist to forecast, but I believe the consumer will come back. Now, principle is economy, more you spend, more you make. US is printing notes. They are giving monies. My nephew didn't go for school. President Trump was kind enough to give him $1,200 in his account, right? So the monies are being printed all around, I hear Lufthansa got some $8 billion, somebody gets some $4 billion, the rescue packages are coming in. So economy will come back. When it will come back, we don't know. The fear in terms of passenger traffic is a fear factor. Like, Glyn was saying, you're sitting here, someone coughing, you look into that direction with anger, with doubt, with kind of not being comfortable. So that will go with vaccine. And my belief, vaccine is away for at least 1 year minimum by the time you have production reach to the people. So you'll have this uncertainty for 1 year. This is my belief, but you will see demand coming up. Let me tell you, I think in Delhi, somewhere, the mall, they had to shut. There was so much rush, people coming in. They had to shut the doors for not more people coming in. So coming back globally, customer will awake. Of course, there is issue. Your luxury items people will not buy. I'm not going to buy $3,000 of leather bag for my wife, right? I would still look at maybe $30 or something. So that profile will change. Coming back to India, India is becoming the focus of government is self-reliance. So you'll see more and more things are being manufactured in India. You're going to see some shift which is going to come. Of course, major chunk will go to Vietnam, Lagos, Thailand and all. We're not going to get that largest scale out of migration of China, but high end will come into India. You just heard some 100 items defense is just banned yesterday, not allowing any import. So import will get impacted. So I tell all forwarders, people who has got import has a good chance to negotiate better rate with airline for their export. So if you have an import, you're going to be king in time to come. So you will have to innovate a method how you're going to handle that import, right? So I think that then if you're an Indian forwarder, you will start looking for import customer. So import customer is going to be king. He will see a lot of rate reduction from forwarders. You will see a lot of rate reduction from airline because Halit will not bring aircraft empty, right? But he will take export out and you'll see that difference coming in. So I think this is going to be a new phenomenon until you have passenger traffic coming back. which will be 1 year from now. So 1 year from now, if you're a smart Indian forwarder, go for import customer, right? Look after him, give him advice, do his door-to-door, reduce his cost, figure out how you can do it, and make that imbalance of import-export as your marketing tool. So if you go to an export customer and say, now you will not say how much export you are handling. You will say, I handle so much import. Give me that cargo, I can get you a better rate. So that's what's going to happen. And it's going to be quite funny though.
I think great segue into the next segment really of this discussion, which is a little bit more regional in context. I think we've talked about, the airlines, we've talked about IATA at macro levels. One of the things that Tushar mentioned, I think right now is, with the possibility of an indigenous vaccine, India has a couple of candidates and a couple of candidates that are at late stages of trial and testing being produced in India for local demand and export to low-cost countries as well. So most of the manufacturers that are in this race, at least the Indian manufacturers, are talking about the fact that the demand is not only going to be local, but it's also going to be in other low-cost countries that are looking for vaccine situation. How is the Indian pharma biotech industry catering to this massive distribution and warehouse requirement? Recently communicated protocols allude to 2 to 8 degree temperature range for the supply chain of these vaccines. Most of the companies are saying that the temperature protocols need to be between 2 and 8 degrees. Storage and movement requirements are very difficult to imagine in some countries. We had the biotech panelist earlier who's not there. How is biotech, for example, coping with the huge change in quality, integrity of the product across the supply chain?
Well, do you want me to take this? Because now I've been following, I dream vaccine and I dream COVID.
Yes, please.
There is a forecast, 8,000 747 aircraft you will need to send vaccine out of India. And of course, government is going to play a role. The vaccine first will be distributed in India. So if you're a forwarder, get into domestic distribution first. 130 billion people, vaccine shots to be distributed in India. Can you imagine what kind of opportunity that will have? So it will be multimodal. You will send it to each capital of the state and then distributing, depending on the geography of each state. So that would be a great opportunity. I believe India would get a major share of vaccine. 2-3 things happen. Vaccine which are developed probably in India will not be able to export. They will have to be given first to Indians, right? And the vaccine which technology has come from outside will get exported. Okay, because with that commitment, the technology will get transferred. Now, the question I have, the protocols are not clear yet. With this 2 to 8, or it's 15 to 25, or it's going to be minus, we don't know that. Vaccine is a difficult pharma to handle. Normal pharma and vaccine too are different things. Vaccine, you can't throw it onto the floor and can't give it beyond certain force. So otherwise, it will get crystallized. Vaccine cannot remain without temperature. Extraction in vaccine is very, very peculiar. So we'll have to invest in infrastructure at the airports. And I'm happy to say, at least at Mumbai, thanks to my principal here, Manoj Singh is here. And we started the terminal in month of February without knowing COVID was coming. So from 5,000 ton capacity, we have 19,000 ton to capacity. And we are the only terminal in the world which can store 3 747 cargo on a temperature control on our storage facility. Now we are looking how we can increase this throughput, what we can do, how we can do. We are looking something like 14 to 18 747 we can handle every day. That's the kind of throughput capacity we are putting. So we are not sleeping. We are now looking in, enhancing infrastructure. We are looking at cool dollies coming on the tarmac. We just put one prototype, which worked very well. Of course, how many we will need, I don't know. But we will need Halit, we will need all carriers to look into India, Halit. And you stayed 5 months, but next 12 months, stay in India. Shift your headquarters to India. And you're welcome to come to Mumbai.
Sure.
Okay? And I think that this is a great opportunity for Indian freight forwarder fraternity, Indian freight fraternity, especially cargo. This can't go into sea. This cannot go into sea. Let's build our capacity. Let's build innovation. Let's do something different. And how we can do it together. And I think that's what we need to look at it. And vaccine is going to be really true vaccine for Indian cargo. It will insulate you for many years to come.
Thank you. Thanks, Tushar. Maybe Manoj, given that you're sitting essentially in the gateway of pharma, i.e. Mumbai, how do you see, the pharma commodity essentially going through your gateways? What changes are you gearing up for, and what kind of support are you getting to be able to make Mumbai a real powerhouse gateway for the perceived spike in pharma that you'll see in the next couple of months?
I think Tushar Bhai has already mentioned something called strategy of ours, what we're going to do. I think nothing more to say what he spoke about, what we're going to do. But, in a nutshell, I would say the other airports are also listening. So there are certain strategy more in place because we know what we're going to do. And it's not about, as an airport perspective, we are seeing the entire ecosystem. I keep talking about this word ecosystem because if we fail in any of this supply chain in one area, I think the whole objective gets defeated. So there has been deliberation, discussion, and as Mr. Jani has already mentioned about the infra, this was a vision of 4 years back what we were supposed to do. It was a very difficult task for us to, in a constrained airport, creating this facility and making one of the world's largest and the most efficient one. And the vision is there. Now we are serving those customers with all the challenges which they would like to bring into us. So we enjoy those challenges because we have taken always new innovations. Digital platform is already one of the best in India, I would say, where we launched our airport portal, where now we are syncing and we are connecting our digital. We are CIV airport first in India. We are Pharma Aero strategic member. This is all driven towards the vision of creating this pharma hub for the world. Actually, that's where the vision was, and we have got a right partner, right player, and we're working very closely with our regulatory bodies, especially the drug controllers and the customs, because they are the pillars of our success story. And mark my words, any cargo which comes to Mumbai, as far as pharma product is concerned, when we talk about this product, there is an absolute seamless operations. We have worked on certain container which we started off, one of its kind, where in one unit we have got 2 main deck pallets. Nowhere in the world it is. We worked on those innovations 3 years back, and 14 tons of cargo capacity for 2 main deck pallets was the thought process. There are single cool dollies available, but we thought if a customer wants a solution of say 14 tons to go at one go. Now we are coming out with few more, and those strategy innovations will come in the next session when we get into those discussions. So IATA CIV, Pharma.Aero, getting all the pharma. We have got a complete channel of Pharma Excellence Center, which Mr. Jani has missed out to mention. He has started off a vision called Excellence Center. We are bringing all the pharma companies together to educate us. How do we handle pharma? So we are not here that we are experts in every field. We want to know our boys who are working at the shop floor knows how the production house goes, how the cargo should be handled. And it's not about purely looking into the operational perspective. It's all about to sensitizing that this product is meant for life of the people. So it's all about the airlines also trying to do some multiple workshops. They've come to our facility, has done a workshop with their customers. Now there are biotech companies who are coming in working together. So if you see, there are 3 or 4 big companies who are in the channel race of creating a vaccine for the world. and we are very proud to say that our country is going to give a solution to the world. And in those solution to the world, is not about giving medicines to the people, but it's all about being the player to support the supply chain. Our role is to really see that anything goes, a vaccine goes to people in Europe or US or far off in Africa, and he gets cured and he is safe, because when his perception is that I'm going to get this vaccine, I'm going to really walk down to the street and buy what Mr. Glyn mentioned about the fear factor will go off. So if you see, without vaccine, the perception has changed. E-commerce is, of course, going to be boom. It's going to be the future, but it's all about physical aspect. Today, when we all are on the digital platform speaking, it's become much easier. Fine, to one extent, it is fine. But one-on-one interactions and working on strategy, it has its own charm. People work on digital, but when you read a newspaper, there's a different feeling. So certain things will remain. And we are trying to give that human touch to our supply chain player, and we want to support what they've been doing for, especially the freight forwarders, the airlines. And airlines are giving challenges to us in the terms of bringing more volumes, more business to us, and we are here to gear up and work very closely with them. So all settings are we have now the focus is for the next 4 years or 2 years down the line. What volumes at this airport needs to be done in terms of compliance, safety standards, ensuring the people who are working in the environment are safe. They follow the COVID compliance, which the ICMR, the government of India, keeps on giving every day, every weekend. You will see new guidelines coming in. So we have followed that procedures, the regulatory as well as our own safety parameters of SOP, and it has really worked well. In fact, in the month of March, we ensured with the first airport to ensure that everyone who comes to the cargo terminal, they wash their hand and they enter the facility after temperature reading. 17th of March, we implemented. I think it has worked well. Where we had 100 vehicles to be moved, now we have almost around 1,200 to 1,500 vehicles. So the volumes in that level, we have come to pre-COVID of 70% of the volumes. So we expect this 70% goes to around 90% by March. We're very positive and optimistic. And of course, the secret is already mentioned by Mr. Jani. So I don't want to speak much on that, because we keep a low profile and do our job. So we need support of all the big players, big charter companies, everyone, and they've been supporting us. We're going to try it more bigger and bigger.
I'm sure after this seminar, Manoj is going to fire me, but I have only one request to my Mumbai airport. Please give priority when lending parking for the freighter aircraft when it comes.
I'm
sorry, Manoj.
Now I'm on a driver's seat when it comes to the airport. In my requirement as well as my say in the department as cargo, I can talk about. Everyone is looking at us. It's not that they were not looking at us, but it's more now that the focal area is now on cargo. So anything, this is a bright time for all our players, the channel players, to be supporting us. You tell me your requirements, and we've been doing it. To be very frank, we've got almost around 76 charter flights we've processed. And livestock, how much live goats we've handled in the last 4 months is 140,000 live goats, almost around 120 charters we've done, which was impossible task at the airport. So it was an impossible task, but we took one product. As I told Vikram, we should see that even a stone which is required to be, shipped out, we should accept that cargo also. That for us, anything which goes by airworthiness, we should pick it up. So let's not focus on only one. But today's requirement is pharma. I think there is a huge potential. We've been speaking to those big exporters, and they are supporting us. They have a confidence in us, because the infra is so fantastic that we're going to capitalize it to the maximum extent. And we got absolute strong players, the freight forwarders, the ground handlers, the cargo handlers, the regulatory affairs. So I think it's a good mix of ecosystem, and we will take all challenges. That's what I would like to really put it across to the world.
Thank you so much. Yes, Glyn, please.
Thank you, Vikram. First of all, I want to congratulate Manoj for the strategy that's been put in place there in terms of looking at the critical commodity and what needs to be put in place so it becomes a center of excellence. And I know that Turkish has also invested heavily in all of the certification programs in transporting these precious cargoes. But coming back to the notion of a vaccine and how can we truly protect all of the members of the planet? And I think, as Mr. Jani, we did a similar calculation. If you think that it would be 8,000 747s full of vaccine if it was a single distribution site, that's almost impossible to conceive that scale of distribution. So collaboration is going to be critical by all of the various manufacturers, all of the pharma companies. They have lots of consortiums. They will use what they call distributed manufacturing, where they will then share the recipe and create manufacturing sites around the planet. We're working closely with the WHO and the World Food Programme because these guys are obviously leaders in logistical programs of how to support very at-risk communities in some very distant, remote parts, particularly in Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, etc. And this is where the real challenge comes in, because if you talk about 2 to 8 or frozen, even more sensitive there isn't the infrastructure. I mean, it was just astounding to listen to what's in Mumbai, and there are a number of airports that are following in the same way. But sadly, out of the 16,000 airports on this planet, there's really only a handful that have taken that degree of strategic approach now. And to get a vaccine distributed around the world, it's going to put a lot of challenge in a lot of areas, because a vaccine is only as good if it's distributed and utilized in the condition of which it's designed for. If it goes out of safe temperature range, then they can't use the vaccine because they don't know what happens when the components actually start to break down. So, to truly inoculate and vaccinate the entire planet, there needs to be significant collaboration from people who've already done it so that the best practices can be replicated. Certainly from all of the international agencies led by the WHO, who are doing a tremendous job in what is very difficult and trying times, to actually coordinate and work with all of their various regional agencies. And if I just say, whilst I'm on that, we work quite closely with a number of the UN agencies, and some of the regional agencies have highlighted some of the other sad consequences to the COVID situation that we don't really talk about much, which is the suspension of a number of other vaccination programs designed for protecting those at-risk populations, whether or not it's smallpox, measles, even things such as tuberculosis or hepatitis, etc. Most of those programs have been suspended because, of course, they haven't been able to get the vaccines to there because the passenger capacity, they were using belly capacity, that stopped. They haven't been able to get the volunteers to actually fly out there to distribute these on the ground. And as sad as it sounds, with regards to the COVID situation, there have been hundreds of thousands of lives lost around the world. And again, India is one of the world leaders in producing a lot of these vaccines that get distributed in Africa, they get distributed in Latin America. And sadly, we had cases where the vaccines were ready to go. There was no capacity. There was no people on the ground to actually distribute these. And as we've said, that a number of lives have been lost because of the impact of not getting people or product out to them. So that's all the more reason, again, why we're all hopeful that the other positive consequences of a vaccine for COVID will be able to restart those other health programs, which are so critical to protecting, as I say, at-risk and less fortunate populations around the world.
I have a point to just add. I have a point to add what Mr. Glyn mentioned. This is the most important aspect here. This is a very good example which he has mentioned. I've seen in a few part of the US as well. They're kind of focus on the export-oriented countries where like pharma, most of the export goes from here to Europe and US and African nations. The same kind of infra or ecosystem is not there. What happens in this? There is a possibility of a channel break, and it has happened in the past where the challenge remains for the pharma companies. They are always on a fear factor. That's the reason they want to have all those KPIs to be monitored, every element of one chain to the other, right from the airport to the hub, and from hub movement to the final destination, and from there to the end user on the last mile. So here, what happens is, I think we have to bring in confidence to all these shippers to bring those kind of positiveness, because you have a challenge of this vaccine or for any pharma product that it reaches on time and in a safe manner. And when there is always not a blame game, I would say. There is always a check by every supply chain whether you handled it or not properly. So what happens in this scenario? We have seen multiple cases where if things are moved better here at the destination or in the hub, there is a challenge. I think somewhere maybe for this particular project, Glenn, I would like to put my thought process. I think if these sessions are all out here should have some actionable points, or maybe we can try to work on certain things where IATA can play an important role. That suppose this vaccine can be a case study to the world if we are ensuring we are working with 4 airports in the world as a hub where we will be like, through our digital platform, we're going to have a real time connectivity with them and try to give a confidence to the customers that, your shipment has arrived to the hub and, it go to the other airports and it goes to the final destination. But can IATA play an important role out here? Take this case study of Mumbai or, the vaccines which are going to ship out, whichever country it goes, those safety parameters and the SOP or KPIs can be monitored as a complete procedural stuff which changes, and it has to be by default the procedures should be implemented in future. Maybe this some thought process needs to be. I think everyone has to sing together. They have to work together on this, because this is a very challenging logistic action which we all have to work together. It cannot be a silo management. It cannot be that I did my part and then it goes to it like a relay race and I'm not responsible for it. So I think we should be sensible enough and to be passionate also to see that it reaches to the vaccine. If a cargo goes from here to say Johannesburg, its end user is at Johannesburg airport. The airport, all the guys who have shipped the goods, whether it is airline, airport, forwarders, everyone has to ensure that the shipment has reached, and we should be so sensitive in that manner. Can we work on those lines? Because I think this will really help our supply chain players to be together on this collective effort. This is purely a collaborative and collective effort, and it can be achieved. It's not about that we can't do it. We have got strong digital platform. We got strong players who really can handle. They know the product well, and of course, pharma company will be given more of confidence if we all work together on this.
Thank you. Thanks, Manoj. I think, yeah, please, Halit.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
So, that India, of course, is one of the best place to about these vaccines for pharmaceuticals. It's the pioneer country and ahead of the game always. Like Tushar mentioned, they were thinking about expanding before COVID, and they like technologies like blockchain, while people were trying to understand what it is, India was implementing it in the supply chains of pharmaceutical. They know it and they're implementing it already end to end to secure the pharma production to consumption. So for sure, it will be the hub for the vaccine production for COVID, hopefully soon. And I see that they are confident, Manoj and Tushar, not to be the bottleneck in this process. So as an airline, we also don't want to be the bottleneck. We are also doing our homework. We are also investing for new storage facilities for pharmaceuticals in Istanbul hub, and new aircrafts will join. And now at the moment we have 18 frequency in India, and we are of course ready, more than ready, to increase the capacity to accommodate more of the vaccines and pharmaceuticals. And I hope we can do it as soon as possible and get the psychology of the people back to normal and focus on what is coming next.
Thank you.
I'll just end here. Glenn, just to you for this line, and you are our well-wisher, so India is a pharmacy of the world, okay? We sell 20% generic drug of the world market. We are making that share to reach to 40%. And India will be the pharmacy for vaccine, the vaccine to the world. What we want to achieve, and what Manoj was saying, anything which is shipped out of India on any airport, it is safe to consume. It's like you are in Switzerland, anything, in Switzerland work on dot on time. So Swiss watch, right? People, you would say you have a Swiss watch. So a customer and consumer in the world is going to ask, is it pharma come from India? Okay, it's reliable. Just take it. That's what we want to do collectively. And it's not only us. Is the manufacturer, is the forwarder, is the trucker, is the airline, is the airport. All of us, we have this vision. And this Pharma Excellence Center has this vision to work together. So when you go on a shop, right, and see a drug come from India, you said, no issue, blindly take it.
I think in that broad conversation, we've covered essentially not only an airport operator, but an airport operator when it comes to hygiene sanitization, an airport operator when it comes to pharma standards and pharma expectations of any airport operator. We've also talked about improvement and innovation that's already taking place, for example, in Mumbai airport, to be able to cope and cater to not only pharma, but the massive throughput volume increase that's already taking place and which will continue to happen at least for the foreseeable future. Given that we're just about 10 minutes away from the end of the session, I wanted to briefly touch on 2 points I think that came up during our ice-breaking session yesterday, which were I think very, very relevant to the discussions of today. One of them was Glyn obviously talking about the fact that, you know, post-COVID, as we come out, all of us in our business, in ourselves, need to be able to embrace transformation and change. His view is that nothing is going to be the same as it was before, at least in our business per se. Maybe Glyn, can you spend just about a couple of minutes expanding on that and sharing with the audience your view and your point there?
Thank you, Vikram. Yeah. Well, I think, and as others have mentioned on this call already, the world has changed. How we respect, and I think as Mr. Jani was saying before, we have a greater empathy, we have a greater appreciation. I think we certainly have a greater focus on digitalization. Just the number of webinars, sadly, the number of people that have had to see my face on video rather than just my voice on a telephone has, led to all sorts of problems for people around the world saying, we've seen too much of Glyn. But the world that we know has gone. As we said, we will look at things differently. We will act differently. And we need to embrace and need to make sure that we don't revert back. I think the demand for digitalization, for example, right now is huge. It's the largest I've seen for the last 10 years. We've got governments saying they don't want to see papers coming across their desks. They want to move to much more e-documentation. They want to use much more data exchange rather than document exchange. And I think these are some of the innovations which we need to embrace. This industry has struggled with digitalization, as you know, for the last 10, 15 years. There's pockets of success, we know, but as an industry, we're still not where we need to be. So I think that's one positive that will also come out of this, which is everybody realizes that they need to move to digitalization. I think we've also had a greater appreciation for people. I think the air cargo industry, I've had many discussions in the past with people who've said, I only work in air cargo. Well, I think those conversations are gone. I think it's like, I work in air cargo. I'm proud to work in air cargo. I've been pleased to be in this industry for 37 years. And I think that the next generation of people, they can't help but look on every news channel and see freighters being unloaded, being boxes and palletized cargo going across tarmac. CNN every day carries some article about how air cargo is saving the planet. And when a vaccine comes in, even more so, you'll just see that the PR side for the industry will hopefully create an impetus to get that next generation coming in, because that next generation is so critical, because we need that innovative entrepreneurial spirit. Air cargo, as we know, as an industry, serves the world as it is today. As we get older, there's a few of us are mature, Halit and Manoj, the younger two, I think, on this call, and Vikram, but, Mr. Jani and myself, we worked out together. We have over 80 years in this industry, which is a long time. But as that next generation comes in, they need to make sure that this industry can serve the world as it is. So it's incredibly important to get that next generation coming in. And I know that in India, it has to be said that it's probably got the best heritage of any country on this planet for second, third, fourth generation businesses, for families bringing in their own offspring, as it were, into the business. And I think that's critically important to keep that energy coming in there. So I think that the world has changed and we need to embrace some of these changes to make sure that we have, as it were, a sustainable future. Can I just say two other very quick comments here now?
Sure.
Something that I was just thinking as Mr. Jani was speaking there, and we know, and I've been a strong supporter of a lot of the Indian government approaches for Made in India, Make in India, for example. Maybe there should be a new one, which is Saved by India. If you think about how big your pharma industry is, a Saved by India program would be pretty viral around this planet and would really highlight, as you say, some of the great stuff you're doing here. So if the government's watching, I don't need any credit for that, but I'd love to see a Saved by India program.
I'm sure you will have a meeting with our Prime Minister. It's a nice slogan. He loves slogans.
Thank you. I think that's a
Nice.
I think that's a wonderful point. Very well put by you, Glenn, to kind of bring me back to a thought as well. When we were getting out of university and looking for careers and professions, this business was looked at as, oh, you want to be a cargo agent, which is kind of seen as bottom of the food chain kind of stuff. Today, you talk about this business really as a supply chain business, and you talk about young graduates and really the most intelligent people being able to transition and take a step into this industry, into this profession, because of the amount of change that we've seen in the last 20 years, 25 years, plus literally the change that we're going to see literally in the next 3 years, I would imagine, would make more and more people kind of embrace this profession and this industry. I'm going to say that all of this culminates into a very relevant point that Tushar was making when we talked yesterday a little bit on how his chief technology officer is now, so we talked about digitization, we talked innovation, we talked blockchain, we talked maybe AI, robotics, so on and so forth. And Tushar made a very relevant point about how, technology and his technology expert is really getting the biggest seat and the broadest table in terms of the board of his organization. So Tushar, maybe a little bit from you. You've led this, you pioneered this, and maybe a little bit from you on how you see that change taking place in our industry.
So we always taught, I come from a business community, and our first thing what we are taught in business is finance. So if your accounts and finance are in safe, company is safe. Okay, that's what we have been taught. And I'm third generation in the business. Now what I've learned and what our emphasis is, if my data system is safe, then I'm safe. Now that was just safety. But now data is part of my manufacturing, part of my production. So I need to know, Vikram, that you come and last time you met me in my office on 30th of March and what we talk, what clothes you wear, how did you come, which car you had come. And my artificial intelligence should give me all that data, including what we talk and what you are and what you're looking in the future. Now, that's just, I'm giving as a layman language. But imagine before cargo coming into the terminal, I would know what is the volume of the cargo, how it is shaped, what is spec, where it has to go. Is it gone to this customer and again? Is it going again back? Something what Glyn said, is it going to Africa? Now the pre-message can go to the African counterpart. The truck is just about to reach now to our terminal. You have 48 hours to prepare yourself. Are you ready? Can you imagine what it can do? All with data. So remember, right now, our IT program is exchanging scanning documents. No, data has to travel. And data has to travel before the cargo reaches. So data is important, and a lot of airlines, integrators have mastered this art, and that's why they're successful. Look at FedEx, look at UPS, DHL. They've mastered this art of the data. If you go to FedEx center in Colorado, it looks like a huge, space center. You can see anywhere in the world which aeroplane going where and what is happening. You go to DHL's headquarters, You'll see how large it is, or UPS. So I think the data and technology is going to be the key. And I said always this, if you have a children now, don't send him to MBA school. Make him data scientist. You will need him more because he will learn. He's a businessman. He will learn, finance and plus minus anyway. But data science is difficult to learn. Machine learning is difficult to learn. The 3D printing is going to play a role in air cargo. Mark my word. Now, this is where it will take us to the future. So I'm not, that's why I said, okay, I'm sure some of the CFOs probably on the panel, they're not going to like me, but I would pay more money to my CTO than CFO now. That's how I look at it, So he's going to be sitting next to me. And, this terminology of technology is difficult to understand, right? So you have to understand this lingo. And I'm telling you, all my next generation, my family are becoming data scientists. If they want to go data scientists, I'm ready to pay their fees, their everything, whatever they want to do. So I would suggest all of you do that. So data, and data.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Tushar. We've just come to the end of our session. So we had really some great, very, very rich conversations around some of the points that we had put together and which we wanted to share with the audience and share with all of the Logistic Insider partners and associates. And I want to end by saying, first of all, to congratulate Logistics Insider on a great kickoff session. I think it was very, very worthwhile, and really there was a lot of learning, productive sessions. And then I want to thank all of the esteemed panelists for sharing their valuable time, knowledge with us, and to all of the participants that attended this session in large numbers through Logistic Insider's platform. We wish you and your teams a healthy and safe few months ahead in the battle against COVID-19. We will try and put together some talking points and some takeaways and conclusions from the session today that Logistic Insider can share with you on their YouTube channel, on their LinkedIn profile, their LinkedIn platform, and really carry these conversations forward. So thank you all, and be safe, be well, and we will connect again.
Vikram, thanks for your moderating us. And I'm so glad Glyn and Halit both were here. They really brought the nice color. And Glyn, thank you for being friend to India. I never thought save India, save world, right? So that's a great, save by India. What a great thought. India. So thank you for that on behalf of 130 billion people.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, great session.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.